There's an AI Pentester that reads your source code, identifies attack vectors, and then actually exploits them with working proof of concept attacks. It scored 96% on the XBOW benchmark, found 20 plus vulnerabilities in OWASP juice shop, including authentication bypass and database exfiltration, and it has 36,500 GitHub stars. This is Shannon, and it's the closest thing to an autonomous security researcher you can run from the command line. Shannon Lite is an autonomous, white box AI security testing framework developed by Keygraph. The core concept is straightforward but powerful. Combine static code analysis with dynamic exploitation. Shannon reads your source code to understand how your application works, identifies potential attack vectors from the code, and then validates every finding by executing real exploits against the running application. The critical distinction from traditional security scanners is that Shannon only reports vulnerabilities it can prove. No theoretical risk assessments, no maybe vulnerable flags. If Shannon reports a SQL injection, it has working proof of concept code that demonstrates the data exfiltration. If it reports an authentication bypass, it has actually bypassed your auth. This proof or nothing approach means every finding is actionable, and every report comes with a reproducible exploit. The framework targets the OWASP top categories: injection attacks, cross-site scripting, server-side request forgery, and broken authentication and authorization. Shannon's credibility comes from benchmark performance. On the hint-free, source-aware XBOW benchmark, a standardized evaluation for AI security tools, Shannon scored 96.15%. That means in a controlled environment with no hints, Shannon autonomously identified and exploited over 96% of the known vulnerabilities using only source code access. On the real-world side, Shannon identified over 20 vulnerabilities in OWASP Juice Shop, a deliberately vulnerable web application used for security training. The findings included authentication bypass, SQL injection with database exfiltration, cross-site scripting, and broken access controls. These aren't synthetic benchmarks. Juice Shop is the standard training target for human penetration testers, and Shannon is matching or exceeding junior pentester performance on it autonomously. Let's look at the repo. 36,500 stars and 3,800 forks place Shannon among the most popular security tools on GitHub. The codebase is TypeScript, running on Node.js with Docker-based infrastructure. The README is comprehensive: quick start guide, configuration reference, authentication setup, workspace management, and clear documentation of the Pro Edition's additional capabilities. There's a Claude.md file showing the project is built on top of Anthropic's Claude Agent SDK. The AGPL 3.0 license for the Lite Edition means you can use it freely for security testing, with commercial licensing available through Keygraph for the Pro features. The project has 9 open issues and 17 pull requests, indicating active development and community engagement. Shannon operates as a multi-agent pipeline with 4 distinct phases. First, reconnaissance, service discovery and endpoint mapping using Nmap, Subfinder, WhatWeb, and Schematicus. Second, parallel vulnerability analysis. Multiple agents simultaneously assess different attack categories against the discovered attack surface. Third, parallel exploitation. For every identified vulnerability, a dedicated agent attempts to create a working proof-of-concept exploit using browser automation through Playwright and command line tools. Fourth, reporting. Correlated findings with source code locations, exploit details, and severity assessments. The parallel execution is key to performance. Rather than testing one vulnerability category at a time, Shannon runs up to 5 concurrent pipelines, configurable through the max_concurrent pipeline setting, and the entire pipeline runs on temporal workflow orchestration, giving it durability. If a run is interrupted, it resumes from where it left off with completed agents skipped. Running Shannon takes one setup command and one start command. npx at keygraph/Shannon setup pulls the Docker containers and starts the temporal infrastructure. Then npx at keygraph/Shannon start with a target URL and source code path launches the autonomous pentest. Shannon handles everything from there: reconnaissance, analysis, exploitation, and reporting. You can monitor progress in real time with the logs command, list all your runs with workspaces, and check service status at any point. The workspace system means every pen test run is named and resumable. If you stop a run or it gets interrupted, restarting it picks up exactly where it left off. Configuration supports YAML files for authentication credentials, 2FA TOTP secrets, target-specific rules for what to test or avoid, and custom login flows for complex authentication setups. Let's talk about the types of vulnerabilities Shannon discovers and proves. SQL injection. Shannon identifies injectable parameters from source code analysis, crafts payloads, and demonstrates actual data exfiltration from the database. Cross-site scripting, both stored and reflected. Shannon injects payloads through browser automation and proves they execute in the victim context. Server-side request forgery. Shannon identifies internal service call patterns in the code and demonstrates access to internal resources that should be unreachable. Authentication bypass. Shannon analyzes auth middleware for logic flaws and proves unauthorized access to protected endpoints. And broken authorization. Shannon identifies role-based access control patterns and demonstrates privilege escalation. Every finding comes with the exact source code location, the exploit payload, the response proving the vulnerability, and a severity rating. This is the kind of evidence that security teams can act on immediately without additional verification. Shannon Lite is the open-source pen testing framework. Shannon Pro is Keycraft's complete application security platform that builds on top of it. Pro adds agentic SAST with code property graph analysis, deep static analysis that understands data flow through your application, not just pattern matching. It includes SCA with reachability analysis, dependency vulnerability scanning that tells you whether vulnerable code paths are actually reachable in your application, secrets detection with liveless validation. It doesn't just find hard-coded keys, it checks if they're still active. Business logic security testing goes beyond OWASP categories to test application-specific logic flaws, and the platform correlates findings across all these tools. A static analysis finding that's confirmed by dynamic exploitation gets a higher severity than either alone. Pro runs as a self-hosted runner, keeping your code on your infrastructure. Shannon is powered by LLM reasoning. It uses Anthropic's Claude through the Claude Agent SDK. You need an Anthropic API key as the primary credential, though AWS Bedrock, Google Vertex AI, and even Claude Code OAuth tokens are supported as alternatives. Configuration supports YAML files where you can define authentication credentials for the target application, TOTP secrets for 2FA, avoid and focus rules to control what Shannon tests, and custom login flows for applications with complex authentication. Rate limit handling is built in. You can configure retry behavior with up to 100 retries and 6-hour back-off windows. The max_concurrent pipeline setting lets you throttle from 1 to 5 simultaneous vulnerability assessment pipelines, depending on your API quota and target application capacity. Shannon has one fundamental limitation. It's white box only. It requires access to the application's source code to guide its attack strategies. If you're doing black box testing against a target you don't have source for, Shannon isn't the right tool. This is by design. Source code access is what makes Shannon's analysis targeted rather than brute force. It also means Shannon needs a running instance of the application to test against. You can't just point it at code and get results. The code analysis guides the attacks, but the attacks execute against the live application. Performance depends on your LLM provider's API capacity and rate limits. Complex applications with many endpoints will consume significant API tokens. And because Shannon executes real exploits, you should only run it against applications you own or have explicit permission to test operations. If you're a development team that wants continuous security testing as part of your CI/CD pipeline, Shannon can autonomously pen test every deploy before it reaches production. If you're a security professional who needs to scale your pen test capacity, Shannon handles the routine vulnerability discovery while you focus on complex business logic and manual testing. If you're a startup without a dedicated security team, Shannon gives you AI-powered security testing for the cost of an API key. And if you're studying application security, Running Shannon against intentionally vulnerable apps like Juice Shop is one of the best ways to learn what real exploits look like and how they're discovered. AGPL 3.0 licensed, 1 NPX command to start, and a 96% success rate on industry benchmarks. That's Shannon, an AI pen tester that doesn't just find vulnerabilities, it proves them with real exploits. GitHub link in the description. Subscribe to Prism Labs for more security tool deep dives.